Welcome back, everyone. It is week 12 of From Stands College Football Show. Joining me yet again, we got Tom Scavetta and Andy Hopper. Tom, start with you. Just had a nice little episode for your NFL Dare show with an NFL guest. So, how's your day been going? How's that interview for you?
My day's been going great, Brian. Thank you so much for having me as always. Yeah, busy night for me. Got home from work, and I'm like, well, I'm going to interview Antoine Bethea tonight, the 20th all-time leading tackler in NFL history, former safety for the Colts, Giants, Cardinals, 49ers, and former Super Bowl champ. I'm like, wow, Andy's buddy Tone got this set up, and it just fell into my lap. I'm like, wow, it was just a real crazy day for me, and now I'm here to talk about my second love, which is college football.
Well, this show is probably a bit of a downgrade because I have zero Super Bowl appearances, so I can't match them there. Andy, how's your night going?
Night's going all right. Week's going okay. Recovering from another disappointing loss last week from my guys. The Illini now 2-game losing streak, no longer control their own destiny, and staring the number 3 ranked team in the face on the road in their place this week. Uphill battle. Obviously, still been a great year. It is quite a bit of a worse feeling than thinking we could potentially go 10-2. Now we'd be lucky to go 9-3. I don't want to be the guy that the Illinois fan to complain about an 8-4 season, a potential 8-4 season, because that's quite an improvement on what we're used to here. But at the same time, it definitely gives me a case of the blue balls and a lot of thoughts of what could have been. But anyway, keep playing hard. I do want to send my condolences to Brett Bielema and his family. Unfortunately, his mother just passed away. So that's going to be at the forefront of his mind this week. So thoughts are with you, Brett. Good luck this week. And yeah, somber start to the show for me, but let's pick it up from here.
Yeah, I did see that. I was like, just as I was gathering the last of my notes before the show, I saw that news break. Actually, the news article that I saw posted, they led with the mother thing was like the very last thing. So I saw death and then Brett Bielema. And in my head, I was like, I didn't keep reading for a second. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, obviously, not great news for the Illinois family, but thoughts, prayers to Mr. Bielema and the Illinois program. Besides the Illinois game, we had a few other games. We'll quickly recap them. Tom, what were your games that stood out from Week 11?
The game that none of us could pick at the end of last week's show, TCU and Texas. 17-10 win for number 4 ranked Horned Frogs. They continue to impress. I was very pleased by their performance. Washington upsetting Oregon, 37-34, essentially eliminating the Ducks from any college football playoff consideration. And Brian, this might surprise you, but your hometown team, the UCF, Knights beating Tulane. That green wave wasn't so green, huh? 38-31 final score. Congratulations, Brian. Your team continues to move up in the rankings. This might be the highest you've been since like 2018, I want to say. So
Probably,
those
yeah.
are the 3 games that stood out to me the most.
Yeah, thank you for the shout out there for the Old Knights. Andy, besides the Illinois game, what were you watching this past week?
How about North Carolina just squeaking one out over Wake Forest, 36-34. Drake May continuing to put on a Heisman caliber season, but I don't know. Is North Carolina like the most fraudulent 9-1 team of all time? Like the defense is not good. I mean, Drake May has been awesome. Obviously, he's got that connection with Downs that's been great this year too. How about? This is a game that I'm sure nobody watched. Arizona over UCLA late at night, 34-28. Big win for the Wildcats. Not great for Chip Kelly and the Bruins going into this matchup this week with USC. Other than that, what else stood out? How about Alabama with a comeback win over Ole Miss? Ole Miss really giving them all they could handle, 30-24. A couple big plays by Bryce Young down the stretch, and they're out of college football playoff contention, folks. But they're back. They're back to their winning ways. But yeah, that's kind of what stuck out to me.
Yeah. Yeah, the Arizona one was just bad. I was asleep for that one. That was too much after dark for the Pac-12 for me. But that's probably helped ruin about 75% of the Pac-12's chances of getting a team into the playoffs. So, congrats to Arizona, I guess. This is a type of chaos
every year. They eat themselves alive every year.
Exactly. This Pac-12 chaos that we love to see. And then the last one for me was Washington over Oregon. I don't know. Did either of you guys watch that game?
I caught highlights.
I was walking around Chicago, so not really.
Yeah, so Oregon didn't play great, this is what I'll say. I didn't think they were a playoff team to begin with. I know we hyped them up last week after shitting on them the previous 11 weeks. And so what I'm thinking about this team is just anything that we say, they will go and do the opposite. But the play that kind of sold the game, Bo Nix got hurt, kind of half injury. At one point, he decided he could go back in, or medical cleared him or whatever. He's jumping around on the sidelines, and Dan Lanning doesn't see him, so they don't call a timeout. They keep the backup in while they're going for it on fourth down in their own half of the field. So not really sure what was going on in their mind there. Obviously, they didn't get that fourth down, and it caused them to lose the game as Washington kicked the game-winning field goal. So just a wild end of the game there, but I don't know. The Pac-12 just doing what they do. Ruining Oregon's chances probably at the playoff now. They'll need a miracle. We'll jump into our first segment of the week here. We have LSU, the broth gate. This was the highest trending Twitter thread of college football over the weekend, and I don't know why. I guess people just love ridiculous situations like this. But Brian Kelly and the staff brought out coffee, broth, and hot chocolate for the LSU team. This game was freezing pregame. There's ice and snow all over the field, but the team was getting roasted on social media because by the time the game started, it was mid 30s, and I'm a Florida boy, so I'll go to you guys first. For me, that's pretty cold. So for me, I'm loving this, but I want to know what you guys think. What is the embarrassment factor here? Is this a situation where you just really shouldn't care if it helps the players? It's whatever, or is this a little bit of an overreaction, and they're being a little bit of babies on this? Tom?
Well, it's always Brian Kelly. It's always Brian Kelly. I mean, hell, last week we're sitting here talking about him as a coach. Now we're talking about him for bringing out broth and coffee for his players. Like, is this what we've gotten so low to here? Look, Brian Kelly was born in Massachusetts. He grew up in the cold. I'm from New York. I experience cold winters every year. I won't speak on behalf of Andy, but I know he's from Illinois. And at the end of the day, I'm not one to judge. Maybe mocking is definitely a little overkill. I wouldn't go as far to bring out chicken broth and hot chocolate to my team. But again, I think the mocking is a little overkill. But I think to your point about having on-campus CFP games, that would be fun in the new 12-team format until it gets to the Final Four. At that point, I think it should be neutral site. But that 5 through 12 week, yeah, have it at on-campus sites. That would be awesome. Reward the higher seeds for performing well. The places will be rocking. And hell, if LSU has to travel up north, then deal with it. You're a bunch of grown-ass men. You don't need chicken broth and hot chocolate to stay warm on the sidelines. I mean, it's part of life, right? I mean, are we not all alive? I mean, we are. Yeah, well, my opinion is weird, but no reason to mock.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am in the boat. But I will say, because I've lived my entire life down here. I visited Chicago and New York, all those northern states, but never in the dead of winter. So as a Florida boy, where the humidity is 80%, which I know a lot of these LSU players come from the South, they go through the same type of thing. 34 degrees. I can still handle that, but I understand the fact that it was freezing pregame. I appreciate the broth and the hot chocolate. I don't know about the coffee. Seems a little weird to me. People get coffee shits all the time, so I don't know if that's something you want to be drinking during the game. But the broth I thought was a good idea, and the hot chocolate I personally appreciated. So yeah, Andy, we'll go to you. You're another northerner up there in Chicago area. Like Tom said, the follow-up that I want to know is this kind of a sign that if we get to an 8-12 team playoff, that those first rounds need to be played on campus, because that makes things super interesting. These SEC teams don't go north of the Mason-Dixon line ever during regular season, really. If they are, they're playing indoors. So, would that mix-up make things a little bit more interesting for the college football landscape?
Oh, absolutely it would. When they first announced this idea, that was honestly one of my favorite parts. These places will be going fucking bonkers, and especially if it's in a place like Michigan or Ohio State or anywhere up in one of these northern schools, it's gonna be freezing that first week of December. And yes, Brian, 35 degrees is cold. It's been that range all week here in Champaign, and it's fucking cold. All right, so I don't blame them for having stuff like that to warm up on the sideline. I'd like to in my head. I'd like to think there was just a walk-on or a backup just hitting those up the entire game because they're just standing around not playing. I do think Tom's right. Maybe the chicken broth it was a little bit of overkill, but I mean, who doesn't love a good broth? Come on. Who hasn't been with their boys just fucking crushing some broth, watching
the
some
broth.
ball, playing some ball? I don't know, but the coffee shits is a good point there. I can't imagine the broth is going to sit too well if you've got to go out and like run routes or try to get to the quarterback. I don't know. I think it was a little weird. Must have been a slow news day, if that's really like all we had to talk about. I don't know, but I definitely think we'll could see more of this in the future. I think, I don't know, 35 degrees definitely is cold. I don't know if it warrants like all that shit though.
Well, what I'm going to take out of that is that you said 35 degrees is cold.
It is.
My northern relatives always give me shit for saying that 35, 40 is cold because I'll be wrapped up. It's like 50 here, and I've got a jacket on for the first week this season so far. So that is cold for me. And then Tom, just to close on your point about all these stories, so far seem to be about Brian Kelly this season. He's a weird dude. But what I will say is he's getting the wins, and that's all that matters. So if he wants to do those dancing TikTok videos with recruits and put broth on the table during the games, let it happen and let those W's keep coming.
We'll move into my rant again from last week.
Exactly.
Sorry, Brian.
Exactly. We'll move into our next segment. It is the blind resume. I have the teams up here. The boys cannot see them. They have the stats. You can see the teams on the screen here. We have Team A through D. These are the 4 undefeateds, and I am going to have the boys rank them in terms of who they think the 1 through 4 would be in the playoffs based on these stats. We have some of the more popular ones: strength of schedule, strength of record, their record versus top 30 teams, and their offensive and defensive ranks. Tom, we'll start with you. It's a bit of a mixed bag. Usually, it's kind of easy to pick out like 3 of the 4, or well, if you got 3 of the 4, you'd have all 4. But 2 of the 4 from the stats, but they're kind of all over the place. So I'll start with you. What is your take on these? You've been looking at these you had them for about 10 minutes now. Who would you pick as your number 1 seed? We'll start with
that. Team C would be my number 1 seed. You want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, sure.
So offensively, number 1 ranked offense, number 5 ranked defense. Those are the 2 biggest keys for me. I could care less about strength of record or strength of schedule. I'm looking purely at who has the best records against the top 30 teams, and offensively and defensively, where you're ranked at the end of the day. And I say that in a tongue-in-cheek type of way because, for example, we look at the top teams this year, like Georgia and Ohio State. Like they may not have played like insane schedules, Ohio State in particular, but I know they've had a couple tests here and there. But at the end of the day, you want to rank these accordingly, and I think strength of schedule in years past, some really, really good teams, like the top teams in the nation, haven't really played like the top of the line dog mentality type teams, if you get my gist there.
Right. Andy, who's your number 1 seed from this?
This is really tough.
It really is.
I'm not a big numbers guy. I think Tom makes a really strong case for Team C. And then if you do go off their record versus the top 30 plus the offensive and defensive rank, just purely looking at that, I absolutely would agree with Tom. I'm going to go with Team C as my number 1 as well.
All right. Tom, back to you. Team C is your number 1. Who are they playing? Who is the 4 seed, the worst of these 4 to you?
4 seed is Team B. Because if I didn't pick them, I'd be contradicting what I just said a few moments ago. Team B, their strength of record is really difficult. They're 4-0 against the top 30. That's great, but at the end of the day, offensive and defensive rankings matter. Even when you're playing against the best teams in the nation, that's what's going to win you championships, right? You have to have, top tier rosters. And this Team B that we're looking at here, to me looks like a top 6 to 10 team, if we're being honest with each other. And they're probably in because, they've had a really good season.
All right, Andy, who's your 4?
I'm going to go with Team D, switch it up a little bit. Feels like they ain't played nobody, Paul. If you look at that strength of schedule, only 2-0 versus the top 30, maybe haven't truly been tested yet. Yes, the offensive rank of 7 and the defensive rank of 9 is sexy, but they haven't done anything for me yet. Okay, they ain't played nobody, so I'm gonna go Team D. Switch it up from Tom.
All right, so we got 2 versus 3 now, Tom. You can do both of them between who do you have left? You have A and D left. Who's your 2 and who's your 3?
My 2 is Team A. I mean, the defense is just outstanding, and the offense is right up there. I think what kept them from being the top team for me is that Team C had top 5 in both offense and defense. This team has the top defense for me, so they're definitely Team 2. Gosh, I feel like something's telling me Team A is the top team, but I'm just going to go ahead and call them Team 2 for now. Strength of record, yeah. At 4, I have to put them above Team D and make Team D my Team 3. But yeah, so I think for me, then it's Team C, A, D, B, I think.
Yes. CADB. And Andy, for you, your 2 versus 3 matchup. Who's who? And then we'll get into which of these teams was actually which.
I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to say Team B is my number 2.
Okay.
Strength of record at 1. Strength of schedule at 38. They're 4-0 versus top 30. Maybe their offensive and defensive ranks are a little lower just because of the level of competition they've played so far has been so high. So I would say they're the most one. You could make the argument that they would be the most battle-tested team so far out of this group if you just if you base it on strength of record and their record versus the top 30. So I'm going to put them at number 2, and then I'm going to put Team A at number 3. I feel like it's really close for them as well. Obviously, like Tom said, with the number 6 offense and the number 1 the defense in the country, that definitely speaks volumes. I don't know. This is tough, but I'm gonna go B is my 2, A is my 3, C is 1, and then D is my 4.
Yeah, we've done blind resumes here in past seasons, and like I said before I even opened this, it's usually still fairly straightforward this late in the season, but this one is really difficult. Tom, we'll start with yours. Your 1 versus 4, you did knock Georgia at number 1. Andy, you also had Georgia at number 1, with your 4 being TCU to Andy's number 4, which was Michigan. So Tom's full matchups is Georgia number 1 taking on TCU number 4, and Ohio State taking on Michigan, which, as we know, probably won't happen because they have to play each other here very soon. And then Andy, your 4 was Georgia versus Michigan, and TCU at 2 taking on Ohio State at number 3. So definitely some interesting matchups there. Obviously, as a person that put it together, I can't do a full blind resume here, can't participate. But what I will say is that I agree with Andy on Michigan being number 4 because that strength of schedule at 83, my boys, my Knights, UCF, when we were undefeated, we got dogged for that strength of schedule. We were 76. All right, Michigan is sitting at 83. So to be lower than that, I don't know how the committee can justify if they kicked us out. If Michigan loses the game against Ohio State, I think they have a 0% chance at the playoff. That's how I'll put it, because that'll leave them with the worst record against top teams, the worst strength of schedule, and they've got the second worst offensive and defensive ranks there. But I will agree, I did also have Georgia at number 2, Georgia number 1, and then I agreed with Andy on TCU at number 2. So that will wrap up our blind resume and move us into the games that are actually happening this week, and that is our shots and chasers. Andy, we got Illinois on the board here. I know you just said you took the 2 losses in a row, but you never know. The defense is still looking good. You're taking on a big opponent, though, this week in Michigan, so we'll start with you. Are the boys pulling it off, or is it going to be 3 losses in a row?
Oh, man. My heart is saying they're going to pull it off. My mind is telling me this could be ugly. They have to respond. Like, last week was tough. They had opportunities to win. I'm not a guy that loves to complain. But I will say the ref crew on the Purdue Illinois game was the same crew that fucking hosed them in Indiana. So maybe some bad blood there. They had 5 defensive pass interferences called on them. One of them was on a Devon Witherspoon interception that was maybe the worst call I've ever seen in my life, that directly led to a Purdue touchdown on the very next play. Another example of refs directly affecting the outcome of games. But anyway, to this game, you got to contain Corum. He's proved to be one of the best running backs in the nation. You got to keep McCarthy, I don't want to say second guess, but yeah, second guessing himself. You got to make him frazzled. You got to get to him. He's a young guy. Hopefully, cause an interception or two, or any type of turnover. You hope Chase Brown is okay. He kind of messed up his ankle a little bit, I think, at the end of the Purdue game, which not good because he's been everything to us. DeVito's got to take care of the ball. He threw his first interception last week since that Week 2 game against Indiana. And you just got to show me more on offense. Let's take more shots downfield. I mean, Michigan's going to know what we're going to try to do. Everybody knows what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to pound the rock with Chase Brown. He's incredible. I know he's leading the nation in rush yards still by almost 100 over the second closest guy, Corum. So what I expect to see in this game is a lot of running from both sides. Hopefully Illinois can keep it close. Like, I feel like this game goes one of two ways. Is they keep it really close, they're potentially leading late in the game, and they absolutely break my heart into a million pieces once again, or they just get blown out. I really, really, really want to be a homer and pick Illinois, but my mind is telling me Michigan wins this game. Illinois has to win this game if they want to keep their hopes alive for the Big Ten championship game. Technically still a possibility. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm going to be rooting my ass off for them. But I think Michigan wins, unfortunately.
All right, Tom.
Yeah. Everything Andy just said, and saying that Michigan is going to win, because Illinois is coming off back-to-back losses to the Spartans and the Boilermakers of Michigan State and Purdue, respectively. However, I will say both defenses have played really well this year, giving up under 13 points per game. We mentioned Brett Bielema early on in the show. Why did he get hired by Illinois? Because he excelled as the Giants' outside linebackers coach in 2020. He was hired by Illinois while the Giants were still in season. So he was that good of an assistant for us that he was able to get Andy's team's job. But again, the problem, how are you going to stop a running back that has 17 touchdowns on the year and nearly 1,400 rushing yards, and a secondary back in Donovan Edwards, who is going to be the future back there for them? Defensively, we also look at what they got in Mike Morris, 7 sacks, and Rod Moore with those 3 interceptions in the back line. They just continue to plug and place players. J.J. McCarthy is slowly but surely becoming their quarterback. At this time, Chase Brown still has more rushing yards than Corum, but that won't last after Saturday. Give me Michigan.
Wow, that is brutal, throwing that last stat in there. Listen, I've stood up for Notre Dame several times against ranked teams, so I'm going to do it here for Illinois and pick the Illini. Michigan State has Ohio State after this game. This is a very, very predictable trap type of game where they're looking ahead too far into the future. They got their big rivals, the big boys, Ohio State, next week. They might not come out 100% in this game. If Illinois can get an early edge, they've got the defense that can then try to hold them. Both teams do have super impressive O-lines to protect for those, 2 super impressive running backs. So I do think we see mainly a run scheme here. I think, Michigan does have this, I guess, a little more than slight edge at quarterback. But I will say is J.J. McCarthy just had his worst game as a starter last week versus Nebraska. He went 8 for 17 for 129 yards versus the Nebraska Cornhuskers. All right. Yes, they've got an interim coach, and it's, maybe things are on the up and up. But I think Illinois' defense is much better than Nebraska's. And for Nebraska to hold him to 129 yards with like a 55% completion percentage, okay, doors open for me. Illini can sneak a win here, I think. Does it happen? I think coin flip on a big upset, but, I'm riding with the 50-50 odds here and going with the Illini, Andy's Illini, to sneak an upset here. Then in our chase slot, we have Pitt taking on Duke, a little ACC action. Neither team ranked. Not really many fans probably excited about this game, but it's a weak schedule this week. Everyone's prepping for, the big rivalry games. So this is what we got. Tom, we'll start with you. Pitt versus Duke. Who takes it?
So Pitt's favored by 7, despite having a worse record. Pitt 6-4, Duke 7-3. Both teams scored a lot of points. Also, both these teams have a common opponent loss in UNC. They both lost to them. I look at Riley Leonard. I don't view him as just a passer. I view him as a runner as well. He's a dual threat. 15 touchdown passes, 10 rushing touchdowns, 25 total touchdowns for Riley Leonard through 10 games, and 625 yards on the ground. Duke also has a good running back in Jordan Waters, 8 scores on the year. And then tight end Nicky Domelin leads them with 4 touchdown receptions. Again, they clearly have a team with a better tight end, which is always key. Brandon Johnson, 5.5 sacks for them defensively. Man does it all. 5 passes defended and 2 interceptions. And we know he'll be keying in on what's been a quarterback struggle this year for the Pitt Panthers. With Keaton Slovis transferring there, it's been a mess, quite frankly. What's keeping them uptight, I should say, on their offense is Israel Abnaconda, 17 rushing touchdowns, over 1,200 yards. Dude's a stud. He's an animal. But that's it. That's all they've got, guys. Offensively, I mean, their defense has 37 sacks through 10 games. I'll give them that. That's just under 4 sacks a game. But it's going to be tough. But I think the home field advantage favors them here. I really do. Duke's defense doesn't impress me enough. Going with the home team, guys. Pittsburgh.
The Pitt. Andy, Pitt or Duke?
Yeah, I'm going to go Pitt as well. I know there's been some questions at quarterback for Pitt, like Tom said, but I can't ever trust Duke in a football game. I don't care what their record is. I'm going Pitt.
Yeah, make a sweep because I'm taking Pitt as well. Abanikanda is an absolute animal. Just, on a whim, I had their game on when they were playing for Virginia Tech. And, with Slovis transferring here, I thought they were going to be a pretty pass-heavy team. And I think he took a knock in that game, which is why Abanikanda got so many carries. They gave him the ball 36 times. He went for 320 yards and 6 touchdowns. He also went for 3 touchdowns a few weeks ago against ranked UNC. I think it was Andy earlier in the show, pointed out that UNC's defense is dog shit anyways. But, it's still a good performance, and he's just an absolute animal. Tom, like you said, Abanikanda is kind of all they have there. We saw Jordan Addison transfer out. He's at USC now. That might have made this team really good, had he stayed with Slovis's arm. But yeah, Slovis, not only is he a transfer, a story released yesterday that he is possibly looking to transfer out after the season again. So things just not going well for him in his path. He still, hasn't settled in anywhere. I don't know if his head's going to be in the right place. So this could be another one where, I'm sure the coaching staff saw this story. So I think we might see a lot of play calling just go Abanikanda's way, very run heavy. And yeah, I like the fact that Riley Leonard is a dual threat, but I think Pitt is still the better team here, and they take this game. Give me 3 more touchdowns for Abanikanda in this game on the ground. Moving into 3:30, we have Kansas taking on Texas here. Both teams, I think, the joy has sort of been sucked out of the Kansas hype here that we had earlier in the season. But this game is on the card because both teams have the same exact record. I don't think that's something anyone would have expected had you told them that at the beginning of the season. Tom, we'll start with you. No Jalen Daniels at Kansas. They got Jason Bean now filling in at backup, but he's done a decent job. Who wins this game?
Well, Texas 6-4, Kansas 6-4. 2 teams that have promising starts to the season. Kansas especially, real disappointing how far they've fallen. They're 9-point dogs at home. Speaks volumes to the Longhorns defense and what they were able to do last week. Again, I'm not one for participation trophies, but their defense looked good last week against TCU, despite how bad their offense performed. They kept them around in the game. They held Max Duggan to just 124 passing yards. I think Bijan Robinson is going to be the X factor in this game with those 12 rushing touchdowns. Xavier Worthy, Jatavion Sanders, always good options in the passing game. When we talk about the Longhorns defense, we have to talk about 2 players specifically. Linebacker Jalen Ford, 91 tackles, 2 sacks, and 2 picks, 2 forced fumbles as well on the season. And Barron Sorrell leading the team with 5.5 sacks. I think will both cause problems on that front line for Kansas's running back in Devin Neal, who's closing in on 1,000 rushing yards this year. Jason Bean, he's played well. I don't know if I fully trust him yet, though, especially against the Kansas type of team. I think Ewers is the superior quarterback here. There's 4 players on Kansas, though, I will say, that have 4 or more touchdown receptions. Look for Max Fairchild and Quentin Skinner to get involved offensively for the Jayhawks. But ultimately, I do think Texas is the one that pulls it out. I think they finally have a get-right type of game, being favored by, 9 on the road.
Yep.
It says something about your football team.
Andy, who's taking it, Kansas or Texas?
Yeah, my only concern with the Jayhawks here is this defense going to be able to stop Texas. I mean, they're coming off a game where they just gave up 43 points to Texas Tech. Took a tough loss there. Obviously, Texas, their offense didn't look too great last week against TCU, only putting up 10 points. I do think they have the superior offense, though. If you look at the weapons that Ewers has around him, I mean, we talk about him all the time. Bijan Robinson and Worthy as well, Xavier Worthy, have been outstanding. So I'm going to go with the Longhorns. I know Lawrence is going to be jumping for this game. Which you never think that about a Kansas football game, but with the resurgence they've seen this year, they actually have had some decent crowds. So, and I think they beat Texas last year, right? Wasn't
Yeah.
or was that? Yeah. So
Hmm.
I think they're going to show up. I think they're going to be loud. I think Kansas gives them a game, but ultimately, I think Texas comes away with it.
Yeah. I'm going Texas as well. The hype at the beginning of the season was fun. I still like the direction that this Kansas team is going, but I just think Texas is showing that they're the better team. Both teams have had, sort of a wishy-washy season, but I think you can still sort of see that the talent is better at Texas. They've got the better pieces. Jalen Daniels, is now out, and like Tom said, can't really trust Jason Bean to show up in these big games yet. He had like sort of that Cinderella game the game that he did come in for Jalen Daniels, but he's been average to above average ever since. And then the Texas defense holding TCU to 70 points. I know they lost the game, but that was a dogfight of a game, which I didn't expect Texas to give. So that was a little bit of a shimmer of hope for me that the Texas program is still probably going to be all right if Ewers in that offense. Besides Bijan, he's always been clicking. Can continue to grow and move forward. Texas, they're fighting for a spot in the Big 12 title game. If they get these last two wins, I think they're in for sure. So they still have something to fight for. Kansas is out. All four of their losses are conference games, so they've got no chance at this point. And then Bijan Robinson is just the biggest piece of the puzzle here for me. This past week against TCU was actually the first time in 5 weeks that he went for under 130 yards. So he's just been racking up the yards. TCU held him, but I don't think that happens 2 weeks in a row, especially against this Kansas defense that is pretty porous. And then moving to our chase slot, we have another kind of random game here. We have Auburn taking on Western Kentucky, but a little bit of an interesting story here because Auburn still has a chance to go bowling, and that is because Cadillac Williams, the interim coach, has the boys rolling here. The team trusts him. The fans love him so far. Tom, we'll start with you. Western Kentucky, we've talked about them quite a bit the last 2 seasons. That offense can be really hot, but can they take down Auburn?
I'm going to talk myself through this here. The Hilltoppers are 7-4, yet they're 5.5-point dogs on the road to a 4-6 SEC team. Again, Auburn's had the far tougher schedule. It's not even comparable, but they only beat A&M by 3 last week. A&M is officially eliminated from bowl contention, by the way. We were all right on our opinion about Texas A&M. Austin Reed, outstanding QB, 31 touchdowns on the year. Malachi Corley and Daywood Davis, each with 7 touchdown receptions. They have 4 receivers with over 500 yards. I don't know how Auburn's going to be able to keep up with that. I mean, to be honest with you. And Jaquez Evans, again, good player, 8 sacks defensively for them. And Auburn relies on their ground attack. Again, they don't really have the best quarterback situation either. I mean, they're relying on Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter. So this might shock some people, but I'm rolling with the Hilltoppers here on the road to take down the SEC Auburn Tigers.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, I love the pick. So Auburn tweeted out this like pregame graphic that was like unintentionally like the hardest like WKU promo you've ever seen with Big Red like overlooking this Auburn stadium. I don't know. I can't in good faith trust this Auburn team with how up and down they've been this year, and obviously since naming Williams the interim head coach, he has he's lit a fire under the boys' asses. They've definitely, you can tell that they are responding to him, and there is a general like of him around the program. I love a sneaky upset from Western Kentucky here. I love it. That air raid offense, they're going to try to score a bunch of points. I don't really know how their defense is going to hold up against Auburn. Not that Auburn's offense has been super impressive, but I'm going to roll with Tom here. I'm going Western Kentucky upset, SEC upset on the road.
Yeah, so I mean, I love as a Tampa Bay native, where Cadillac Williams played ball. He was a really good dude. He's a really good player too. His time was probably shorter than I thought it would have been in the NFL. But everyone here loved him, so I do want to see him do well. I think winning out this season, if they got a bowl and went to win it, I think there's a good chance that they would name him permanent head coach. Because I mentioned this last week on the show for that Texas A&M game, they went and sold out the game. They're 3-6 at the time, and fans wanted to go support Cadillac as the new interim, and they snapped a 5-game losing streak in the process, taking down Texas A&M, who we love to dog on because they're supposed to be so good. They got all these recruits, they got Jimbo, all this money, and they took them down. So down but not out is kind of how I see this Auburn team right now. But Wow, I thought I was going to be the special one going with WKU here, but I guess we're going to have a Hilltopper sweep. Listen, that I love the air raid offense that they play at WKU, and then on top of that, I just want to know. I don't know if anyone saw their helmets. Andy knows I'm a sucker for jersey and uniform things. He's got me.
Were so sick.
He's got me to switch a few times on jerseys, but I saw the helmets myself. They had big red, huge on the side of the helmets. Some of the best helmets I've seen in a while. Super old school mascot logo. So that and enough was to turn me. But when I was just kind of looking at the stats here, yes, Auburn has been pretty lackluster just about everywhere. They're going to go up against Hilltoppers defense that leads the nation in forced turnovers with 30, leads the nation in defensive touchdowns with 6, and leads the nation in interceptions with 17. So this is not, your grandma's WKU here. They got it on both sides of the ball. So a sweep for the Hilltoppers is what we're going with here. Then moving into 7:30, we have full slate of Pac-12 After Dark. In our first game, we have UCLA taking on USC, two ranked teams here, boys, fighting. I mean, I think Oregon's probably out, so these two teams could be the ones fighting for that Pac-12 title and maybe shot at the CFP if someone else slips up. Tom, we'll start with you. Who's taking this one?
Well, we all know UCLA had that disappointing loss last week to Arizona. They are the better running team, but guys, let's not fool ourselves here. Caleb Williams is on another level since transferring to USC. 3,000 passing yards, 31 touchdowns to just 2 interceptions. I mean, the guy throws the ball a lot. Now, granted, they'll be without Travis Dye. He's sidelined with an injury. That's their starting running back, so that's a big loss for them. Who's going to fill his shoes? I don't know. Jordan Addison is still there, their leading receiver defensively. Tuli Tuipulotu with 11 and a half sacks. I know I completely butchered the last name, and then you have Kalen Bullock as well with 4 interceptions. Their defense is sound. They're technically sound. They don't make many mistakes. UCLA's QB, Thompson Robinson, good quarterback, not as good as Caleb Williams though. Has 7 touchdowns on the ground, 20 through the air. Again, good ratio, touchdown to interception. Zach Charbonnet, good running back, really solid, finds the hole, hits it well, doesn't hesitate. 13 touchdowns on the season. Jake Bobo, solid receiver, 6 touchdowns. And then Laya Tuletu with 8 sacks for the Bruins is a key player for them. What really it boils down to me is I think at this point, USC is the more energized team. They've dominated this rivalry as of late, and they're fighting for their college football playoff lives. I mean, this might be, I think the winner of this goes to the Pac-12 title game, I think. Right? Because then we have Utah and Oregon, right? So it'll be one. I think if USC wins, they're in.
Yes.
I think that's how that works. But I'm going with USC here. I don't trust UCLA right now. Their defense is too suspect to me. I just think USC has more talented players all across the board.
All right, Andy.
Yeah, I completely agree with Tom. And this may sound dumb because I know they both have a chance to make the conference championship game, but to me, USC has more to play for. They still could make the college football playoff, where I don't see a scenario where a 2-loss UCLA team gets in, even if they were to beat USC. Obviously, this is still a rivalry game. It's awesome to fucking beat your rival, especially if you are in UCLA shoes, you be playing spoiler at this point. But to me, you have Caleb Williams, the more talented quarterback, and that's kind of all I really need to know about this matchup. He's fucking electric, super fun to watch. Oh, by the way, he has maybe the best receiver in the country to throw to in Jordan Addison, a guy Tom mentioned earlier when we were talking about Pitt. So I'm going to go with the Trojans here. I think they take this one over UCLA.
Yeah, this one's tough for me just because I think losing Travis Dye is a huge piece of the puzzle for this team. That opened up, the passing game, to allow Williams to get those 3,000 yards because he's an absolute animal, Travis Dye. I don't know if you guys saw the image. I think it was Getty Images or one of the school photographers as they were carting Travis Dye off the field. It was a picture of Caleb Williams back to the camera. He looks so depressed, hands on his hips, feeling like, what the hell are we going to do now? So obviously he can still get it done with his arm, but that's a huge loss for them to lose Dye, for the rest of the season, let alone just this game as they try to, get into the Pac-12 title game and the CFP playoff potentially. I think this one, I mean, you guys talked up Caleb Williams, but, Thompson Robinson is great with his arm and on his feet, definitely better on his feet than Williams is. Arm's a little bit lacking compared to Williams, but I think this one is going to be a shootout without Dye because the two teams, when you combine the points that they score and the yards that they put up, combined for 82 points per game and over 1,000 yards of combined offense. So I know we see games like that in the Big 12 a lot, and G5, 1,000 yards combined is a lot. We might see like a 52 to 45 last second game here. It's going to be my shootout of the week. So I'm going to go against the grain here from you guys and go with UCLA, because I do think this is just going to be a true shootout game. But I do think USC is the more talented team. Then moving into our chaser for 7:30, the last game. I think this game is a little bit later, starts at 8. We have Oregon taking on Utah. Like I said, we talked up Oregon, and now they lost after we shit on them, and they kept winning. So not sure who I want to pick here. Tom, we'll start with you. Who do you want to pick?
Well, you have Cam Rising for one team. You have Bo Nix for another team. Both teams are 8-2. Both not mathematically eliminated yet from the CFP. Utah favored by 2 on the road. Let's keep that in mind. Oregon's coming off that tough loss to Washington. Utah does own a win over USC this year. Let's keep that in mind before we pick this game. Cam Rising, we have to talk about him. 19 touchdowns, 6 rushing. Tavion Thomas averages 5 yards per carry. Dalton Kincaid is the leading receiver at tight end, 7 touchdown receptions. Also, Clark Phillips III, guys, 5 interceptions in the secondary. That's very, very, very impressive for the Utes. Bo Nix has been phenomenal this year. 39 total touchdowns between passing and on the ground. Troy Franklin and Terrence Ferguson are good receiving options for him. Defensively, I like what they got in the secondary. Christian Gonzalez and Trikwizzy Bridges, each with 3 picks. DJ Johnson, good eyes as a linebacker, sideline guy. But at the end of the day, when comparing these two teams' resumes, I hate to go with the road team twice here, but I'm going to do it. I think Utah is the slightly better team right now. Bo Nix has proved a lot of people wrong this year, and Utah does own that bad loss to Florida, but they're a different team from them. But from then, like I said, they beat USC. So I'm going to go with the Utes here and go with the road team yet again.
All right, Andy?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Ducks to bounce back after that real big letdown. Kind of getting embarrassed last week, to be honest. Utah's only 2-2 on the road this year. Haven't performed that well in the road. This still is an Oregon team. They're the number 4 offense as far as yards per game in the country with over 500. I like the Ducks to bounce back here. I mean, in the past, Utah has had their number the past few years. Like Tom said, Utah getting 2 points on the road does say something. But I'm going to go with the Ducks. Be different, and I think they're the better team.
All right, well, I'm glad we have a split, because now we'll figure out who's actually responsible for Oregon doing the opposite of what we say, because I think we've had a sweep every time Oregon has been on here. Yeah, for me, I'm going Utah as well here. I mean, I love the Bo Nix resurgence. He proved me wrong. I think he proved all of us wrong to some extent based on how we were, treating them. Yeah, the O-line is good, and they've been able to protect him. I think Washington got the 2nd sack, I believe, on him this season, this past week in that win. But what I saw from Dan Lanning and that late game shenanigans, the play calling and just the decision making, I don't fully trust what they're doing as a whole, as a program. I mean, I think he's going to be good there, but it's still, I just think he's questioning himself still. This team has been up and down all season, and with Utah, they do have the win against the best team in the Pac-12, which is USC at this point. So that was a fully stacked USC. Travis Dye and all. So they've got the most impressive win to me. Yes, Oregon's one loss is to Georgia, which best team in the nation, I think. But yeah, last week it looked real bad. I know Washington is ranked, but you can't be doing that if you want to get to the college football playoff. So I think slight edge here for Utah. Love Cam Rising's play, so I'm going to go with the Utes here as well. And that will wrap up our show. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Enjoy the games this week. And down below in the description, you can find all the links to our social media, Andy's social media, Tom's social media, and shows. Go check out that interview he just did with former New York Giant. Enjoy the games, and we'll see everyone next week for Week 13.